The enormous hall stretched out like a crystal cathedral. Ambassador Elena Voss stood at the center of the Galactic Council chambers, watching light reflect off thousands of crystalline surfaces. The ETH Core representatives glowed with their natural bioluminescence. The Zrel hive mind spoke through a dozen bodies at once. The Valtorian nobles sat in their floating chairs, looking down at everything and everyone. Elena took a deep breath. She had prepared for this moment for months. Earth wanted to join the Strategic Defense Coalition. It was the most important military alliance in known space. Membership meant respect. It meant security. It meant humanity would finally have a real voice in galactic affairs. She activated the holographic display. Images of human military tactics filled the air above her. Battle formations, supply chain management, combined arms doctrine, strategic flexibility. She had chosen the examples carefully, showing Earth's best military thinking. As you can see, Elena said, her voice steady, human military doctrine focuses on adaptability and redundancy. We believe that... A sound like breaking glass interrupted her. The ETH Corps were laughing. High Strategos Kaval, their military commander, rose from his seat. He was 800 years old and had won 47 major campaigns. His crystalline body pulsed with colors that Elena's translator identified as amusement. "Forgive me, Ambassador," Kavalin said, though his tone carried no apology. "But your presentation is quite entertaining. Supply lines? Battlefield initiative? These are such simple concepts. Almost primitive." Elena felt heat rise to her face but kept her expression neutral. "Strategic flexibility has served humanity well in..." "You fight like children playing with toys," Azrael's voice said. The dozen bodies spoke in perfect unison, creating an eerie chorus. "You think about food and fuel. You worry about individual ship captains making decisions. This is not modern warfare. This is ancient history." A Valtorian noble leaned forward in his floating chair. "We use quantum-linked battle networks," he explained in a patient voice as if teaching a slow student. "Our ships think as one mind. Our shields synchronize at the molecular level. Our artificial intelligence systems can predict enemy movements 3 steps ahead. Your methods are charmingly simple but not suitable for real space combat." Elena looked around the chamber. Everywhere she saw the same expression: pity, condescension. These elder races had been traveling the stars for thousands of years while humanity was still figuring out fire. They saw humans as children trying to join an adult conversation. "Perhaps in a few centuries," Kavalin said, "when humanity has matured, we can revisit this application. But for now, I must recommend that the Council deny Earth's membership in the Strategic Defense Coalition. Their military thinking is too unsophisticated for our needs." The vote was quick. Unanimous rejection. Elena gathered her materials, her movements calm and professional. She thanked the Council for their time. She walked out with her head high, but inside she was smiling. In a small office back on the human delegation ship, Elena opened a secure communication channel. Admiral Marcus Chen's face appeared on the screen. He was Earth's chief of naval operations, a man who had spent 30 years planning for this exact moment. "Well?" Chen asked. "They think we're idiots," Elena said. "Complete fools who don't understand modern warfare." Chen smiled. "Perfect. Let's make sure they keep thinking that." "You really think this will work?" Helena asked. "Sun Tzu said it best," Chen replied. "Appear weak when you are strong. The Athkor, the Zrel, the Valtorians, they've been at peace for too long. Their tactics are beautiful, elegant, perfect for fighting other civilized races who follow the same rules. But we don't play by their rules. They called our doctrine simple," Elena said. "It is simple," Chen agreed. "Simple like a hammer. Simple like gravity. They've built these elaborate systems that require everything to work perfectly. But what happens when something breaks? What happens when you can't coordinate your shield matrices? What happens when your AI systems go dark?" Elena understood. She had been part of the planning from the beginning. Every tactic she had presented was deliberately chosen to look primitive. The Galactic Council saw human focus on logistics as backward thinking. They saw redundant systems as inefficiency. They saw individual ship captains as a weakness. They were wrong. "There's something else," Elena said. A junior Zrel analyst filed a dissenting report. She warned that our simplicity might be deliberate efficiency. "Where is the report now?" "Buried in committee, ignored. The senior Zrel dismissed it." Chen nodded. "Even better. They had someone who saw the truth and they threw it away." That's what happens when you think you know everything. Elena looked at the tactical displays on her screen, fleet positions, resource allocations, training schedules. Everything was ready. They had been preparing for years, knowing that rejection by the Council was always possible. Knowing that one day, someone might challenge humanity's right to their border colonies. When do you think it will happen? She asked. Soon, Chen said. Kvalan is arrogant. He'll want to teach us a lesson. The ETH core empire is expanding. They'll look at our colonies and see easy targets. Worlds that should bow to superior civilization. And we'll refuse. We'll refuse, Chen confirmed. We'll look desperate and disorganized. We'll scramble our fleets in ways that seem panicked. And then, when they come with their beautiful formations and their synchronized shields and their quantum battle networks, we'll show them what simple really means. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the 3 colony worlds in the border territories. New Pacific, Darwin's Landing, Terra Nova. Millions of humans living their lives, farming, building, raising families. They deserved protection. They deserved a military that would keep them safe. And the Galactic Council thought humanity didn't understand warfare. Get some rest, Ambassador, Chen said. You did exactly what we needed. You showed them what they wanted to see. Now we wait. The screen went dark. Elena sat alone in her office listening to the hum of the ship's engines. Outside the window, stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere out there, high Strategos, Kvalan was probably celebrating his wisdom in keeping the primitive humans out of the coalition. He had no idea what was coming. Elena pulled up her personal files and found an old quote she had saved years ago. It was from a human general named Patton. No plan survives contact with the enemy. The elder races had forgotten that simple truth. Their tactics were so perfect, so synchronized, so dependent on everything working exactly right. But humanity had learned to plan for chaos. Human ships had backup systems for their backup systems. Human captains trained to think independently. Human doctrine assumed that communications would fail, that supply lines would break, that nothing would go according to plan. That was the real human advantage. Not technology, not numbers, but the simple understanding that war was messy, brutal, and unpredictable. And in mess and chaos, the side that could adapt would win. Elena smiled and began writing her report. The Council had rejected humanity's application. They had called human tactics simple and primitive. They had laughed at the idea of supply lines and individual initiative. Perfect. 6 months passed like a held breath. The Ethicor Empire continued its expansion across the outer regions. They absorbed smaller civilizations with ease, sometimes through diplomacy, sometimes through force. Always with the confidence of a power that had never truly been challenged. On Earth, Admiral Chen watched and waited. His intelligence officers tracked every movement of the Ethicor fleets. They studied battle reports from previous campaigns. They analyzed formations, weapons ranges, coordination protocols, everything. Then the message arrived. High Strategos Kvalan's face appeared on screens across 3 human colony worlds. New Pacific, Darwin's Landing. Terra Nova. His crystalline features pulsed with calm authority as he delivered his ultimatum. Attention, human colonists. The Ethicor Empire has decided to extend our protection to your worlds. We offer you the chance to join our civilization and benefit from our advanced culture. You will submit to Ethicor governance within 30 days. This is not a negotiation. This is correction. We are helping you evolve beyond your current primitive state. The message ended. Across 3 worlds, humans stopped what they were doing and looked at each other. Some were afraid. Some were angry. All of them waited to see what Earth would do. Admiral Chen stood in the command center on Earth, surrounded by his staff. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors and displays. Everyone waited for his decision. Send our response, Chen said. 2 words. No explanation. No discussion, sir. Tell them we refuse. The communications officer sent the message. 2 simple words that changed everything. In his command ship above the Ethicor homeworld, Kvalan read the response 3 times. He couldn't believe it. The humans were actually refusing. These primitive creatures with their simple tactics were saying no to the most powerful empire in this sector of space. They don't understand, Kvalan said to his officers. They think their crude weapons and basic strategy can stand against us. We must teach them. What are your orders, Strategos? Assemble the Grand Armada. Call in ships from all allied species. I want the Valtorians, the Zrel, the Korthians, the Millennians, everyone. Make it the largest fleet assembled in 200 years. We will show these humans what real military power looks like. The call went out across the galaxy. Within weeks, ships began gathering at the ETH-Core staging grounds. 3,000 warships from 5 different species. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering. Sleek hulls covered in advanced armor, weapons that could crack planets, shield generators working in perfect synchronization. The Grand Armada was beautiful. Every ship moved in perfect formation. Their quantum-linked communication systems allowed them to act as one massive organism. Artificial intelligence coordinated targeting across thousands of weapons platforms. The synchronized shield matrices meant that each ship's defenses were mathematically enhanced by every other ship in formation. It was the pinnacle of galactic military technology, elegant, sophisticated, perfect. Kvalan stood on his bridge, watching the fleet assemble through the viewports. He felt pride swell in his chest. 800 years of military experience had taught him how to win wars. This would be easy. The humans would see this magnificent force and realize their mistake. They would surrender. And if they didn't, the Grand Armada would sweep them aside in a matter of days. Send messages to the Galactic Council. Kvalan ordered. Tell them to prepare statements about human capitulation. I estimate this campaign will last no more than 3 weeks. Meanwhile, human intelligence officers watched every movement of the Grand Armada. They recorded formations. They analyzed communication patterns. They studied how the ships moved together, how their systems interconnected, where the supply convoys came from. Admiral Chen received daily reports. Each one added more information to his growing understanding of the enemy. He sat in his office late at night reviewing tactical displays, running simulations looking for weaknesses, and he smiled. The Grand Armada was impressive, powerful, sophisticated. It was also brittle. Every advantage came with a weakness. The quantum communication network that allowed perfect coordination also meant that disrupting it would cause chaos. The synchronized shields that enhanced each ship's defenses also meant that breaking the formation would leave individual ships vulnerable. The AI targeting systems that could predict enemy movements were designed to fight other civilized races who followed predictable tactics. They built a machine, Chen said to his staff. A beautiful, perfect machine. And like any machine, it only works when all the parts function correctly. What do we do, sir? We break the parts, Chen said simply. We make them fight our way, not theirs. Orders went out to the human fleets. Ships began moving, but not in organized battle formations. They scattered. They repositioned in ways that looked random and desperate. Scout ships fled before the advancing armada. Communication traffic increased in patterns that suggested panic. ETH-Core intelligence officers reported back to Kvalan. The humans are in disarray. Their fleet movements show no coordination. They appear to be panicking. Kvalan nodded, satisfied. This confirmed everything he believed about human military capability. They were amateurs playing at war. The Galactic Council issued official statements. They expressed confidence that the conflict would end quickly. Some council members privately felt sad for humanity. The humans seemed like nice people. It was unfortunate they had been so stubborn. Kvalan gave interviews to galactic news networks. I will teach these humans about civilized warfare, he said. They will learn that there is an art to military conflict. Their crude methods have no place against true strategic thinking. He even composed poetry about the coming victory. It was an old ETH-Core tradition. Great military leaders wrote verses to commemorate their triumphs. Kvalan spent hours choosing the right metaphors, the perfect rhythms. He imagined future generations studying his words. Finally, the Grand Armada was ready. 3,000 ships in perfect formation. They moved like a school of fish. Every vessel in exactly the right position. Kvalan stood on his bridge, watching the viewscreen show the vastness of his fleet. Set course for human space, he commanded. We will enter through the Erebus Nebula. It's the fastest route to their colony worlds. The Grand Armada crossed the border into human territory. Their passage was magnificent. Thousands of ships moving as one. Their synchronized movements beautiful enough to bring tears to the eyes of watching civilians. Kvalan broadcast a final message to the human colonies. This is High Strategos Kvalan of the ETH-Core Empire. The Grand Armada has entered your space. You have one last chance to surrender peacefully. Submit now or face the full might of the most powerful fleet ever assembled. The choice is yours. On Earth, Admiral Chen received the transmission. His command center fell silent as everyone waited for his response. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the Grand Armada's position. He looked at his own scattered, disorganized fleets. He looked at his officers, many of whom had served with him for decades. Then he typed 4 words and hit send. Come and take them. Across the galaxy, people who heard that response felt a chill run down their spines. There was something in those simple words. Something hard and cold and utterly unafraid. Kvalan read the message and felt a moment of uncertainty. Just a flicker. Then he pushed it away. Humans were posturing, trying to seem brave. It didn't matter. All ships, he ordered. Advance to combat range. Maintain formation. Prepare all weapon systems. The humans want to fight. We will give them a lesson in warfare they will never forget. The Grand Armada accelerated toward the Erebus Nebula. Their formation remained perfect. Their systems hummed with power. Every captain knew their role. Every AI ran optimal calculations. Everything was working exactly as planned, and waiting in the nebula, scattered among the gas clouds and asteroid fields. Human ships powered up their weapons and watched the enemy approach. Captain Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of her carrier, the Indomitable. She had been in combat before. She knew what was coming. But this was different. This was 3,000 enemy ships against maybe 500 human vessels. Captain, her tactical officer said quietly. Those are bad odds, Sarah smiled. Only if we play their game. But we're not going to do that. We're going to make them play ours. She looked at her crew. Young faces. Old faces. People from Earth and Mars and the Belt colonies. They trusted her. They trusted Admiral Chen. They trusted that humanity's simple tactics would be enough. All hands, Sarah said over the ship-wide comm. Battle stations. This is going to get messy. Stay sharp. Trust your training. And remember, we fight like humans. That means we adapt. That means we survive. That means we win. The Grand Armada entered the Erebus Nebula. Their sensors swept the area looking for human ships. They found nothing. Just empty space and drifting gas clouds. Where are they? Kvalan demanded. Sir, the humans appear to have withdrawn. Our sensors show no major concentrations of enemy forces. Kvalan nodded. The humans were running. It made sense. They had seen the size of the Grand Armada and lost their courage. Soon they would surrender. Continue advance, he ordered. Maintain formation. The Armada moved deeper into the nebula, and all around them, hidden behind asteroid fields and inside gas clouds, human ships watched and waited. Captains checked their weapons. The first human attack came from nowhere. A small destroyer squadron appeared from behind an asteroid cluster and fired a volley of missiles. Not at the main fleet. At the supply convoy trailing 200 kilometers behind the Armada. Kvalan barely noticed. Supply lines were for primitives. The Grand Armada carried everything it needed. Those supply ships were mostly for extended campaigns. They didn't matter in the opening stages of battle. Ignore them, he ordered. Small harassment. Continue to the human colonies. Then more human ships appeared. Still small groups, destroyers, frigates. They struck at the edges of the formation and vanished back into the nebula before the Armada could respond. None of the attacks seemed coordinated. It looked like panic, random acts of desperate resistance. The humans are scattering, Kvalan's tactical officer reported. No central command structure visible. Each ship group acting independently. Kvalan felt satisfaction. This confirmed everything. Humans couldn't coordinate properly. Their simple doctrine meant they had no unified battle plan. They were just reacting blindly. Then the Grand Armada encountered the first human carrier group. Captain Sarah Okonkwo's Indomitable sat at the center of a defensive formation. Her escorts surrounded her in what looked like a crude attempt at protection. The Armada's sensors lit up with target locks. Finally, Kvalan said, a real target. All forward ships prepare to... The Indomitable's hangar bays opened. Hundreds of fighter craft poured out like angry insects. They formed up in loose formations and accelerated toward the Grand Armada. Kvalan almost laughed. Fighters? No civilized race had used manned fighters in centuries. They were too vulnerable to modern point defense systems. The Armada's automated weapons would swat them down in seconds. Engage point defense, he ordered. The Armada's weapon systems activated. Thousands of targeting solutions calculated across the quantum network. Every ship knew what every other ship was doing. Perfect coordination. Perfect efficiency. Then the human fighters released their payloads. Not missiles. Not bombs. Something else entirely. Electromagnetic pulse mines, hundreds of them, spreading across the battlefield in expanding clouds. They detonated in carefully timed sequences. Massive waves of electromagnetic interference washed over the Grand Armada. The quantum communication network went dark. Every ship suddenly found itself alone. The artificial intelligence systems that had been coordinating attacks across thousands of vessels began receiving corrupted data. The synchronized shield matrices flickered and failed as the mathematical formulas that bound them together fell apart. "Report," Gvaln shouted. "What's happening?" "Sir, the network is down. We've lost coordination with the fleet. Shields are operating independently. They're at 40% efficiency." That was when the real attack began. Human capital ships appeared from a dozen different directions. They hadn't been running. They had been positioning themselves, creating crossfire angles, setting up overlapping fields of fire, basic tactics that any military academy student would understand. Simple, fundamental, devastating. The human ships opened fire, but not with the energy weapons the Armada expected. Kinetic weapons, railguns, missiles with conventional warheads, old-fashioned, brutal, simple weapons that ignored shield frequencies and energy-dampening fields. A chunk of tungsten moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light didn't care about sophisticated defenses. It just hit. And when it hit, it destroyed. The Armada tried to re-establish its formations. Ships maneuvered to regroup. But they had practiced coordinated movements for so long that many captains had forgotten how to fight independently. They called for orders that didn't come. They waited for AI targeting solutions that were scrambled by interference. Meanwhile, every human ship captain knew exactly what to do. They had trained for this, for communications failure, for fighting alone, for chaos. A Valtorian cruiser tried to reform a defensive position with 3 nearby ships. Before they could coordinate, a human destroyer squadron hit them from 3 different angles. The Valtorian captain called for backup. No one answered. The quantum network was still scrambled. A Zerel battle cluster attempted to use its hive mind coordination as an advantage. But the electromagnetic interference affected their biological neural network just as badly as it affected electronic systems. The hive mind fragmented. Individual Zerel bodies found themselves thinking alone for the first time in their lives. They panicked. Captain Sarah Okonkwo watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as her fighter wings regrouped and prepared for another strike. Her ship had taken damage, but it kept fighting. Human vessels were designed with redundancy, backup systems for the backup systems. Compartmentalized design meant that damage to one section didn't cripple the whole ship. "All wings, new targets," she ordered. "Hit their repair platforms. I want their mobile shipyards burning." Her pilots acknowledged and dove back into the fight. They flew with an aggression that stunned the Armada forces. These weren't sophisticated drones following optimal flight paths. These were humans making split-second decisions, taking risks, adapting to every changing situation. The human fighters reached the Armada's mobile repair platforms. These massive vessels could fix battle damage in hours instead of days. They were essential for any extended campaign. They were also lightly defended because no one had ever directly attacked supply infrastructure in a modern battle. The platforms exploded in beautiful cascades of light and debris. The Armada's ability to repair damage during battle vanished in minutes. On his command ship, Gvaln watched his perfect fleet fall apart. Ships scattered across the battlefield, some trying to fight independently, some calling for orders that couldn't be transmitted, some just trying to survive. This wasn't warfare. This was chaos. "Withdraw to Rally Point 7, he ordered. "We need to re-establish the network and reform." But Rally Point 7 was already compromised. A squadron of human destroyers had positioned themselves there hours ago. They were waiting. When Armada ships began arriving to regroup, the destroyers hit them while they were disorganized and vulnerable. More human ships appeared throughout the battlefield. Not in one massive fleet, in small groups. Each group independent, each captain making their own decisions. They moved like sharks appearing from the nebula, striking and vanishing before the Armada could organize a response. A human boarding party actually breached an ETH Corps cruiser. Marines in powered armor cut through the hull and fought their way to the engineering section. No civilized race had conducted boarding actions in 300 years. It was considered barbaric. But it worked. The Marines planted explosives and withdrew. The cruiser's reactor went critical. The battle lasted 16 hours. When it finally ended, a quarter of the Grand Armada was destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships limped back toward friendly space. They left behind wreckage and bodies and shattered pride. Human losses were lighter. Not insignificant, war was never clean, but manageable. Ships could be repaired, crews could be replaced. More importantly, morale was high. They had faced the mighty Grand Armada and won. On Earth, Admiral Chen received the battle reports. He read them carefully, looking for weaknesses in his own tactics. There were always lessons to learn. But overall, the plan had worked. The elegant, sophisticated Grand Armada had shattered when forced to fight in chaos instead of perfect coordination. Kvalan sat in his damaged command ship, staring at casualty reports. 700 ships gone, thousands of lives lost, and the humans had done it with tactics that any first-year military student could understand. Crossfire positions, supply line attacks, electronic warfare, independent operations, simple tactics. He drafted an encrypted message to the Galactic Council. His hands trembled slightly as he wrote, 800 years of victories and now this, beaten by primitives using obsolete weapons and basic strategy. I underestimated them, he wrote. Sending new strategic assessment. The humans do not fight like civilized races. They fight like it is personal. They accept chaos. They embrace it, request immediate reinforcements and new tactical approach. He paused before sending it. For 800 years he had been considered a genius, a master of warfare, and now he had to admit that he didn't understand the enemy, that his beautiful, perfect tactics had failed against crude simplicity. Kvalan sent the message. Then he sat in the darkness of his bridge, watching the stars pass by, and wondered how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council received his report. They read it in stunned silence. The Grand Armada, the most powerful fleet assembled in 2 centuries, had been bloodied by a race they considered primitive. Humanity's simple tactics had worked. Someone dug up the old Zrel analyst report. The one that had been dismissed months ago. The one that warned that human simplicity might be deliberate efficiency. They read it now with new understanding. We should have listened, one council member said quietly. But it was too late for that. The war had begun. And humanity had proven that sometimes the simplest solution was the best one. Don't build systems that only work in perfect conditions. Build systems that work in the worst conditions. Don't rely on technology that breaks easily. Use technology that keeps working when everything goes wrong. Don't train soldiers to follow complex plans. Train them to think and adapt. 3 weeks became a grinding lesson in human warfare. The Grand Armada learned new things every day. Painful things. Expensive things. Kvalan tried to adapt. He simplified his formations. He added redundant communication systems. He trained his captains to fight independently. But these changes took time. His forces had spent centuries perfecting sophisticated coordination. Breaking those habits was hard. Meanwhile, humanity kept teaching. The Armada tried using quantum-entangled communications for instant coordination across vast distances. Humans jammed them with focused electromagnetic bursts. When the Armada switched to laser communication relays, human stealth ships destroyed the relay platforms. The Armada fell back to radio. Humans jammed that too. Finally, the Armada had to use simple messenger ships flying between fleet groups, just like humans had been doing all along. The Armada attempted elegant fleet maneuvers that required precise timing. Human captains made sudden, illogical decisions that broke the mathematical models. An ETH-core battle group would calculate the optimal response to a human attack, only to have the human ships do something completely unexpected. Retreat when they should attack. Attack when they should retreat. Split their forces in ways that made no tactical sense, until suddenly it did, and the ETH-core found themselves surrounded. The humans don't follow any doctrine, a frustrated Valtorian commander reported. They're completely random, but they weren't random. They were flexible. There was a difference. Human captains understood the principles of warfare, and they applied those principles creatively. They didn't need to follow a rigid plan because they understood the goal. The Armada's shields were calibrated to resist energy weapons. Human railguns and missiles didn't care. The Armada adjusted their shields for kinetic impacts. Then humans switched to particle beams. The Armada couldn't keep up. They were designed for optimization, not adaptation. The Armada's artificial intelligence could predict enemy movements by analyzing patterns and calculating probabilities. But human decisions weren't always logical. A captain might choose to sacrifice tactical advantage for crew morale. Another might take a risky gamble because of intuition. The AI couldn't predict human behavior because humans didn't always follow optimal strategies. Across the galaxy, other species watched in amazement. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions every day. They received reports from the front lines that seemed impossible. The Grand Armada was losing, not quickly but steadily, grinding down under constant pressure from a smaller, supposedly primitive force. How are they doing this? A council member asked. The old Zarel analyst who had written the dismissed report stood up. I tried to tell you. Humans don't fight wars. They solve them like engineering problems. They see warfare as a system to be optimized, but their optimization is different from ours. We optimize for peak performance under ideal conditions. They optimize for reliable performance under terrible conditions. Explain, another member demanded. Look at their ships. They have triple redundant systems. Backup power for the backup power. Compartmentalized design so damage doesn't spread. It makes their ships heavier and less efficient. But it means they keep fighting when our ships would be disabled. What about their tactics? Their captains have something called mission-type orders. Instead of detailed instructions, they receive a goal and figure out how to achieve it. It looks disorganized to us, but it means they can adapt when circumstances change. They don't need to wait for new orders from a central command. And their focus on logistics? The analyst brought up tactical displays showing human supply operations. They obsess over fuel, ammunition, food, spare parts, everything. Our forces assumed we could rely on mobile repair platforms and just-in-time supply chains. Efficient under normal conditions. Vulnerable under attack. Humans destroyed our supply infrastructure in the first battle. Now the Armada is running short on everything while human forces remain fully supplied. The council chamber fell silent. They were beginning to understand. Humanity's primitive focus on basics wasn't because they didn't know better. It was because basics mattered most when everything fell apart. On the front lines, the grinding continued. The Armada tried to establish defensive positions. Human forces bypassed them and struck at supply depots instead. The Armada consolidated their forces for a massive counterstrike. Human stealth ships infiltrated behind their lines and destroyed fuel reserves. The Armada's ships had to choose between pursuing human forces or retreating to protect logistics. Commander James Torres led humanity's Stealth Reconnaissance Division. His ships were older than most of the Armada's vessels, slower, less powerful, but they had one advantage. They were designed to operate alone for extended periods, self-sufficient, equipped for long-range missions without support. Torres took his small fleet deep into ETH-core-controlled space. They avoided detection by moving slowly and using passive sensors. They found the manufacturing centers supplying the Armada, factories producing fuel cells, shipyards building replacement parts, supply depots stockpiling ammunition, and they destroyed them not all at once. That would alert the enemy. Instead, Torres coordinated precise strikes spaced days apart. Each attack looked like an accident or a random raid. But together they systematically dismantled the Armada's ability to sustain operations. The Armada began experiencing cascading failures. Ships broke down and couldn't be repaired. Ammunition ran low. Fuel became scarce. The elegant, optimized supply chain that worked perfectly under normal conditions collapsed under sustained pressure. Meanwhile, human logistics officers maintained careful supply lines. They stockpiled extra materials. They built redundant supply routes. They prepared for losses and delays. Everything the Galactic Council had dismissed as primitive worry became crucial advantage. Political fractures appeared in the Armada. The Valtorians questioned Ethicor leadership. The Zrel hive mind debated internally. The Korthians began withdrawing ships. The Millennians started negotiations with human diplomats. Why are we fighting this war? A Valtorian noble asked Kavaln. You said it would take 3 weeks. It's been longer than that and we're losing ships every day. Kavaln had no good answer. Pride? Duty? Stubbornness? None of those reasons seemed sufficient anymore. He looked at his fleet status displays. 2,000 ships remained operational, but many were damaged. Supplies were low. Morale was dropping. His crews had signed up for a quick victory, not a grinding war of attrition. Ambassador Elena Voss worked behind the scenes, meeting with representatives from the Armada's allied species. She didn't threaten. She didn't demand. She just asked questions. Is this war worth the cost? The ETH Corps wanted our colonies, but what did you want? What do you gain from this conflict? The answers were revealing. Most species had joined because the ETH Corps asked, because they assumed it would be easy, because they wanted to maintain good relations with a powerful empire. None of them actually cared about 3 human colony worlds. Elena offered them an exit. No punishment. No retribution. Just peace and trade agreements. One by one, the allied species began quietly withdrawing their forces. Kvalan watched his fleet shrink. Not from battle losses, from desertion. His allies were abandoning him. The Grand Armada that had entered human space with 3,000 ships now had fewer than 800 effective vessels. And those were tired, undersupplied, and far from home. Admiral Chen studied the reports and nodded with satisfaction. They're learning, but it's too late. They built their entire military culture around sophisticated coordination and perfect conditions. You can't unlearn that in a few weeks. What's next? His chief of staff asked. End it. Crown is going to make a last stand. He's too proud to retreat without trying one more time. We need to be ready. Where? Chen pointed to a star map. The Tartarus Gate, it's the last major choke point before Earth. If he wants to salvage something from this disaster, he'll make his stand there. And we'll be waiting? No, Chen said with a slight smile. We'll be doing something they won't expect. Something simple. Kvalan sent a message to the ETH Corps homeworld. The humans have proven more capable than anticipated. Allied forces are withdrawing. I am consolidating remaining vessels at the Tartarus Gate. We will establish a defensive position there. If the humans want to reach Earth, they must go through us. I will stop them there or die trying. He meant it. 800 years of military service couldn't end in defeat. Not like this. Not beaten by primitives who use simple tactics and old weapons. He would prove that sophisticated warfare still mattered. That civilization still counted for something. The Tartarus Gate was a natural choke point, a stable wormhole connecting 2 star systems. Going around it would add months to any journey. Any force trying to advance toward Earth would have to pass through. Kvalan positioned his ships carefully. He learned from his mistakes. No complex formations, redundant systems where possible, independent fire control, simple overlapping defensive positions. He had 800 ships. Not enough to win through a fence, but maybe enough to hold a fortified position. Let them come, Kvalan said. Let them see that we can learn too. But humanity had one more lesson to teach. And it was the simplest one of all. When your enemy expects you to fight through a defended position, don't fight through it. Go around it. The human fleet appeared at the edge of the Tartarus Gate system. Kvalan watched them on his sensors. Fewer ships than he expected, maybe 400 vessels. His 800 ships held defensive positions around the gate. For once, the numbers favored the Armada. They're going to try to force the passage, Kvalan's tactical officer said. Should we launch fighters? Wait, Kvalan said. Something felt wrong. The humans had been unpredictable throughout this campaign. Why would they suddenly attempt a straightforward assault on a fortified position? The human fleet advanced slowly. Too slowly. They were stalling, but why? Then alarms started screaming across the Armada. Not weapons alarms. System alarms. The Tartarus Gate itself was showing critical readings. The gravitational stabilizers maintaining the wormhole were failing. All of them simultaneously. What's happening? Kvalan demanded. The gate, sir. It's destabilizing. The wormhole is collapsing. How long until full collapse? 40 minutes. Sir, we need to evacuate through the gate now or we'll be trapped on this side. Kvalan understood in that moment. The humans had sabotaged the gate. They had spent weeks infiltrating engineering teams close to the stabilizers. While the Armada prepared for battle, humans were quietly rigging the gate to fail. He had 2 choices: flee through the collapsing gate and return to ETH Corps space, or push forward into human territory and deal with being cut off from reinforcements and supply lines. Kvalan made his decision in seconds. 800 ships against 400. Even cut off from support, he had superior numbers. He could still win. He could push through to Earth and force a surrender. Then they would reopen the gate at their leisure. All ships full advance. Through the gate. We push into human space. But he had chosen wrong. 300 of his ships made it through the gate before it became too unstable. The rest, seeing the danger, retreated back to Ethcore space. The collapsing wormhole separated Kavalan's fleet. 300 ships on the human side, 500 ships trapped on the far side. Unable to help. The human fleet immediately surrounded the 300 ships that had come through. Not 400 human vessels. 800. The rest had been waiting, hidden behind planets and in nebula clouds. Kvalan had fallen into a trap. Sir, we're cut off. Enemy ships on all sides. No reinforcements possible. Supply situation critical. Kvalan looked at the tactical display. He had made every mistake possible. He had assumed the humans would fight conventionally. He had believed his numbers would matter. He had thought he could still win through traditional military superiority. But the humans had never planned to fight the battle he prepared for. They had changed the rules. They had turned his defensive position into a liability. They had divided his fleet and surrounded the remnants. Admiral Chen's voice came over an open channel. High Strategos Kavalan, your ships are surrounded. Your supply lines are cut. The Tartarus Gate will take months to repair. You cannot win from this position. I am offering you terms. Surrender your ships peacefully, and your crews will be treated well. Refuse, and we will be forced to destroy you. Kavalan wanted to refuse. He wanted a fight. 800 years of service demanded it. But he looked at his crew, young Eighth Corps who had trusted him, who had believed in his leadership. He had led them into disaster. He couldn't let pride kill them too. We surrender, Kavalan said quietly, then louder to his fleet. All ships power down weapons. Surrender to human forces. The war was over. Not with a grand battle, not with a heroic last stand, but with a simple trap that made fighting pointless. The humans had won by making combat unnecessary. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. Ambassador Elena Voss stood before them once again. This time no one was laughing. No one called human tactics simple or primitive. You asked us to join the Strategic Defense Coalition, Elena said. You rejected us because you thought our military doctrine was too unsophisticated. I am here to explain why you were wrong. She activated displays showing battle footage from the campaign. You called our tactics simple because we focus on logistics, on adaptability, on redundancy. You called them primitive because we don't rely on artificial intelligence or perfect formations. You were wrong. Our tactics aren't simple because we're unsophisticated. They're simple because they're fundamental. We don't build systems that work perfectly in ideal conditions. We build systems that work in the worst conditions. You confused sophistication with effectiveness. Elena paused, looking around the chamber. War isn't about elegance. War isn't about showing off advanced technology. War is about achieving objectives despite chaos and uncertainty. Human military doctrine accepts that chaos. We train for it. We expect it. And when everything falls apart, we keep functioning. Azrael representative spoke up. You have proven your point. The Grand Armada was defeated by methods we dismissed. What happens now? Now, Elena said, we rebuild. The captured Eighth Corps crews will be returned to their homeworld unharmed. We have no interest in conquest. We wanted only to defend our colonies. That goal is achieved. And membership in the Strategic Defense Coalition? Another member asked. We still want it, but on different terms. We will teach you what we know about warfare, about sustainability, about planning for worst cases instead of best cases. In exchange, we learn from your technology and scientific advances. Everyone benefits, the Council voted. This time the result was different. Humanity was admitted to the Strategic Defense Coalition. Several species immediately requested human military advisors. They wanted to learn these simple tactics that had defeated the Grand Armada. Kavalan was eventually repatriated to Athkor space. The gate had been repaired. The war was officially over. He retired from military service and spent his remaining years studying. Not just studying military tactics, but studying humans, understanding what he had missed. He wrote a book, a treatise on military philosophy. He called it The Sophistication of Simplicity. In it, he documented everything he learned from his defeat. The importance of redundancy, the value of adaptability, the necessity of planning for failure, the wisdom of training people to think instead of follow orders. The book became required reading in military academies across the galaxy. Young officers studied it carefully. They learned not just tactics but philosophy. The understanding that technology and sophistication were tools, not replacements for sound fundamentals. Admiral Chen retired 5 years after the war ended. He had achieved his goals. Humanity was respected. The colonies were safe. The galaxy understood that simple didn't mean weak. Captain Sarah Okonkwo was promoted to admiral. She began training alien officers in human tactics. They came from dozens of species eager to learn. She taught them about initiative, about adaptability, about accepting uncertainty and planning for chaos. Ambassador Elena Voss became head of the Strategic Defense Coalition. She worked to reform military doctrine across the galaxy, not to make everyone fight like humans, but to make sure everyone understood the fundamentals that humans had preserved. The story of the Grand Armada's defeat spread across civilized space. It became a legend, a warning, a lesson. The mighty fleet brought low by simple tactics, the sophisticated coordination broken by basic electronic warfare, the elegant formations shattered by straightforward crossfire. 5 years after the war, a classroom on an ETH Corps military academy held its first lesson. Young officer cadets sat in neat rows eager to begin their training. At the front of the room stood their instructor, an older Athcor who wore the marks of combat on his crystalline features. "Welcome," the instructor said. "I served in the Grand Armada during the human conflict. I was there when we thought we were invincible. I was there when we learned we were wrong." A young cadet raised her hand. "Instructor, why did we lose to humanity? They had fewer ships, older technology. How did they defeat us?" The instructor was quiet for a moment. He thought about the battles, the confusion when systems failed, the panic when formations broke, the slow realization that everything they had relied on was vulnerable, because they understood something we forgot in our thousands of years of advancement. He said finally, "Warfare isn't about elegance. It isn't about sophisticated technology or perfect coordination. It's about winning, about achieving your objectives despite everything going wrong." The humans never forgot that simple truth. He pulled up a display showing human military doctrine, supply chain management, redundant systems, mission-type orders, flexible tactics, all the things the Galactic Council had dismissed as primitive. We built our military around optimization, peak performance, everything working together perfectly. But perfect systems are fragile. When one part fails, everything fails. The humans built their military around sustainability, around keeping things working when everything breaks. When one system fails, they have backups. When communications fail, their captains keep fighting. When supplies run low, they had extras stored. Another cadet spoke up. "But isn't that inefficient? Having all those backups and redundancies?" The instructor smiled. "That's what we thought. That's why we lost. Inefficiency in peacetime becomes resilience in war. The humans understood that. We learned it too late." He pulled up another display. This one showed a human military manual. Simple language, clear instructions.